Listen, there's something you need to understand, and I'm going to say it plain and real. Stop being nice to women. Not because kindness is weakness. Real kindness takes strength. But the kind of nice you were taught to be, it's not love, it's fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being too much, fear that if you speak your truth, you'll lose her. So what do? You stay agreeable, you keep the peace. And slowly, without even noticing, you vanish, not from her life, but from your own. Now let me ask you, what if the very thing you're doing to be loved is the reason you're being overlooked? Every time you say yes when your soul screams no, every time you bend just to avoid friction, you're not building connection, you're erasing presence. This isn't about rebellion, it's about remembrance, remembering who you were before you started molding yourself to be accepted. Because women don't fall for the man who disappears to win them over. They remember the one who stood in quiet truth, even if it cost him comfort, if that stirs something inside you. If you're ready to stop disappearing and start reclaiming who you are, then like this video. Subscribe to Stoic Station. We don't teach you how to chase her, we show you how to return to yourself. Let's begin. 1. Niceness isn't power, it's disappearance. There's a silent trap that too many men fall into, the belief that being endlessly nice will make them unforgettable. That if they're agreeable enough, available enough, selfless enough, eventually a woman will realize their worth and love them for it. But that's not how it works. In reality, the more you mold yourself to her comfort, the more you fade. Not just from her interest, but from your own sense of self. There's a difference between being kind and being compliant. Kindness has boundaries. Kindness respects both people involved. But compliance, that's the quiet erasure of your values in exchange for the illusion of closeness. And the more you shrink to avoid conflict, the more invisible you become. When you always say yes, when you bend to avoid tension, when you trade your honesty for her approval, you're not being kind. You're being erased. And here's the truth most men avoid. Women don't remember the man who tried to please them. They remember the man who stood in his truth, even when it was uncomfortable. They remember the man who was kind, but unmoved, warm, but unshakable. The man who didn't disappear to win her over, but remained rooted in himself and let her come to him. Real kindness is anchored in clarity, in knowing what you stand for, and more importantly, what you will never allow. The world doesn't need more men who soften themselves to fit into someone else's idea of what love should look like. It needs men who know their value, speak their truth with calm strength, and hold their ground not out of pride, but out of self-respect. You don't become valuable by adjusting yourself to meet her comfort zone. You become valuable by becoming the kind of man who lives in his own light and invites her to rise and meet you there. Because power isn't in how agreeable you are. It's in how clearly you know who you are, even when she's unsure. And the moment you stop disappearing into your niceness is the moment you finally become visible. 2. Stop pleasing. Start leading. There's a quiet exhaustion that lives beneath the surface of a man who's always trying to keep the peace. He watches her closely, not because he's present, but because he's cautious. He filters every word, not out of wisdom, but out of fear. He agrees when he wants to challenge. He smiles when he wants to speak. And over time, he forgets what his truth even sounds like. The world may label that as compassion, but let's be honest, it's not love, it's fear. The fear of being rejected if you disagree. The fear of being seen fully, flaws and all, and still being left. The fear that if you stop accommodating, you'll stop being wanted. But here's the hard truth. People-pleasing doesn't create safety. It creates instability. Because the more you twist yourself to avoid conflict, the more uncertain she becomes about where you actually stand. And if a woman can't feel your edges, she'll keep testing for them, wondering if there's anything solid beneath the surface. You don't get what you deserve, you get what you tolerate. Every time you stay silent when she crosses a line, every time you accept disrespect in the name of understanding, you teach her something. Not about her, about you. You teach her that your boundaries are flexible, your truth negotiable, and your presence available no matter how she treats you. That doesn't build love, it builds uncertainty. Because deep down, she doesn't want a man who tolerates everything. She wants a man who leads himself. You weren't born to juggle your needs for someone else's comfort. You weren't built to tiptoe through connection, hoping not to be too much or too honest. And she doesn't want that from you either, not truly. What creates lasting attraction isn't a man who performs to keep her calm. It's a man who walks in calm clarity, who speaks from grounded truth, who knows when to say no and means it. The moment you stop performing is the moment you become undeniable, when you stop seeking her constant approval and start standing firm in your own direction. Something shifts. She stops testing. She starts respecting. Because real leadership doesn't come from force, it comes from presence, from the kind of stillness that doesn't chase validation because it already knows its worth. You don't have to raise your voice to lead. You don't need to be aggressive to be respected, but you do need to stop waiting for her reactions to decide who you are. Because if she's guiding your every move, you're not loving her, you're losing yourself. And when you lose yourself, you lose everything that ever made you magnetic in the first place. Stop pleasing, start leading, and let her feel the difference. 3. No is what makes you masculine. There's a quiet kind of strength that never needs to shout. It doesn't seek attention. It doesn't demand control. It simply knows where the line is and refuses to move it for anyone. That strength is born in a man the moment he learns how to say no without guilt. Most men were never taught that. They were taught that being a good man means being agreeable, being supportive, being flexible. So they say yes to everything. They tolerate what feels off. They accept behavior that chips away at their peace, and they call it patience. But it isn't patience. It's fear. Fear of rocking the boat, fear of disappointing her, fear that if they stand firm, they'll be left alone. But here's the truth. When you never say no, your yes means nothing. When a woman never feels the edge of your boundary, she doesn't trust your softness. She doubts it. Because if your kindness has no structure, it feels unstable. If your approval is automatic, it feels hollow. She can't lean on a man who bends with every breeze. Boundaries aren't barriers. They're invitations. They tell her, this is where I end and where you begin. This is what I will protect. This is what I won't sacrifice. Not for love, not for comfort, not for fear of loss. And when she tests them, and she will, it's not because she wants to hurt you. It's because she wants to feel you. She wants to know you're there, solid, grounded, and not afraid to choose your truth over her approval. You don't need to raise your voice to be strong. You don't need to argue to be respected. You just need to stand still in what matters to you. Say no when something doesn't align. Say it calmly, say it clearly, and say it without apology. Because when a man can say no from a place of stillness, not from ego, not from anger, but from self-respect, he becomes someone she can actually trust. Not because he controls her, but because he controls himself. And in that presence, she finds something far more attractive than blind agreement. She finds a man who is real. The man who says yes to everything becomes forgettable, but the man who says no when it counts becomes unforgettable, Because he doesn't just hold a boundary, he holds himself. And that is what makes him masculine. 4. You allow it, you teach it. Every moment you stay silent in the face of being overlooked, every time you swallow your discomfort to preserve a connection, you're not just tolerating mistreatment, you're teaching her how to treat you. Not with your words, but with your presence. And what you allow, you affirm. You don't need to yell to be heard. You don't need to argue to prove your worth. Your silence, your boundaries, and yes, even your absence, speak volumes. And when those actions come from a place of clarity, not manipulation, they become the most powerful form of self-respect. Every time you stay in a space where you are not seen, you reinforce the lie that this is all you are worth. That her half-hearted energy is enough. That breadcrumbs of affection are acceptable. And you may not say it out loud, but your continued presence says it for you. Women don't just hear what you say, they feel how you respond to what they do. They pay attention to your patterns. They watch what you tolerate. When she pulls away and you chase harder, when she dismisses your needs and you stay silent, when she gives less and you keep giving more, she learns something. She learns that your love doesn't require reciprocity, that your energy is available even when hers isn't. But something shifts the moment you stop negotiating your worth. When you stop making excuses for her inconsistency, when you stop settling for attention that's convenient for her and painful for you, that's when respect enters the room, not just from her, but from within yourself. You don't need to raise your volume, you need to raise your standard. Speak with your choices. Set the bar not by demanding more, but by refusing less. Let her see what it means to love a man who doesn't beg for value, but embodies it. Because the truth is, a man who stays in places that belittle him can't blame anyone else for how he's treated. He taught that treatment through repetition, but the moment he walks away, not in anger, not in spite, but in self-respect, is the moment everything changes. You don't need to be louder, you need to be clearer. Set the standard, then stop negotiating it. And if she rises to meet it, beautiful. But if she doesn't, don't lower it just to keep her close. Because the man who knows what he's worth never has to chase love that's real. He becomes the reason it shows up and stays. 5. Real doesn't chase, it radiates. Attraction isn't built on performance, it's born in presence. And yet, so many men find themselves putting on a mask, shaping every word, every gesture, every response to fit what they think she wants. They chase her attention like it's a finish line, believing if they just play the part well enough, eventually she'll see their worth. But real connection doesn't grow in performance, it grows in truth. You don't need her validation, you embody it. That one shift changes everything. The most magnetic men are not the ones who impress, they're the ones who reveal, who don't flinch when misunderstood, who don't soften their truth just to make her feel safe, who stand grounded in who they are, even if it shakes the connection, especially when it does. You become attractive not by meeting her expectations, but by standing in your own clarity, not by adjusting your truth, but by expressing it without apology. A woman doesn't fall for a man who fits the role. She's drawn to the one who breaks the mold, because something deep in her feels when a man isn't looking for permission to exist. The man who is real doesn't chase energy, he generates it. His confidence isn't in how often he's chosen, it's in how fully he chooses himself. And that presence, that stillness, that certainty, it speaks louder than charm ever could. When he walks into a room, he doesn't need attention. He is attention. Not because he demands it, but because he's not looking for it. He's too busy living aligned with who he truly is. You don't become magnetic by checking boxes on someone else's list. You become magnetic the moment you stop seeking to be received and start radiating from within. not by trying to be liked, but by daring to be real. So drop the performance, stop asking how to impress her, and instead ask yourself, what would it look like if I simply stood in who I am? No filter, no permission, no performance. That's the version of you she can feel without effort. That's the man who doesn't chase and never needs to. Because when you radiate that kind of truth, what's meant for you finds you, and what isn't can't stay. 6. Take the wheel back. There comes a point in every man's life where he realizes he's been sitting in the passenger seat of his own story, adjusting, reacting, waiting for her to believe in his vision, waiting for her approval to move forward, waiting for the perfect moment when everything aligns, when she finally understands who he is and where he's going. But that moment rarely comes, and even if it does, it often comes too late, after he's already lost time, lost momentum, and in many cases, lost himself. You have to stop outsourcing your power. Stop measuring your worth by how much attention she gives you, how much she believes in your goals, or how much space she allows you to take up. She doesn't need to see the vision. She doesn't even need to agree with it. What matters is that you see it, and that you move toward it with or without her understanding. Stop waiting for permission to be the man you were born to become. Because every day you hesitate, every day you over-explain, every day you hold back your truth to keep the relationship comfortable, you drift further from the man you're meant to be. And deep down, she feels that too. The indecision, the hesitation, the self-doubt masked as compromise. And while she might not say it, it changes how she sees you. Not because she wants to lead, but because you've stopped leading yourself. Your life doesn't begin when she approves of it. It begins when you take responsibility for it. When you stop asking to be chosen and start choosing your path, your standard, your mission, regardless of who stands beside you. Because you don't need her green light. You are the green light. When you move with that energy, something shifts. You stop chasing understanding and you start building what needs to be built. She either meets you where you're going, or she fades into the background by her own choice. But either way, you don't slow down, you don't wait, you don't circle back to be re-explained or reapproved. Taking the wheel back isn't about proving anything to her. It's about remembering who you are when you're no longer waiting to be seen. That man, the one who moves with purpose, who no longer hesitates, who acts without permission, that man is unforgettable. And that's the version of you she didn't know she needed, until he stopped asking to be noticed and started becoming undeniable. 7. Don't fit in. Redefine the game. You were never meant to be small. You weren't created to follow someone else's script or trim yourself down to fit into a version of manhood that feels safe, agreeable, or easily consumed. And yet, that's exactly what too many men end up doing. They shrink their truth to avoid tension. They soften their presence to avoid being too much. They edit who they are just to fit the moment. And in doing so, they quietly abandon the man they were meant to become. Every time you downplay your vision to keep her comfortable, every time you hold back your conviction to keep the peace, every time you mold yourself to her mood, you aren't being wise. You're erasing yourself. One compromise at a time, one hesitation at a time, you chip away at your own fire until what remains is familiar but forgettable. Let her either rise with you or watch you from a distance she chose. That's not arrogance, that's clarity. Because a man who is building something real, something grounded in purpose, doesn't wait for everyone to catch up. He moves forward, with or without applause, with or without agreement, and the right ones rise to meet that energy, not resist it. Real leadership isn't rebellion for its own sake. It's not about trying to be different just to stand out. It's about remembering that you were never meant to fit into systems that reward passivity and punish authenticity. You were meant to challenge the patterns that no longer serve you. And sometimes that means challenging her too. Not with ego, but with depth, with honesty, with the courage to disrupt what's comfortable in order to grow something real. Challenge her assumptions, not to control her, but to stay aligned with yourself. Challenge your own fears, not to prove your toughness, but to reclaim your presence. Challenge every outdated belief that says love must be earned through performance, silence, or shrinking, because it doesn't. The man who tries to fit in disappears into a sea of sameness, but the man who refuses to abandon himself becomes the one she can't forget, even if she doesn't fully understand him. You don't need to dominate to lead. You simply need to stop apologizing for your clarity. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. You just need to remember it, live it, and let the rest align, or walk away. You weren't born to fit in. You were born to redefine the game by playing it your way. And when you lead yourself like that, you stop seeking permission, and you start commanding respect without ever asking for it. 8. You don't need her green light. You don't need her to understand your fire in order to feed it. You don't need her approval to take the next step. And you certainly don't need her belief in your vision to make it real. That belief needs to come from you. Not from someone watching you build, but from the man swinging the hammer day after day, whether she sees it or not. Some people won't see your vision until it's finished. And that's okay. It's not their fault. It's not your job to drag them into belief. Your job is not to explain your direction to someone who's still trying to define you by who you used to be. It's to keep moving forward until your presence makes the explanation irrelevant. You don't need her green light. You are the green light. The moment you internalize that truth is the moment you stop waiting and start becoming. And that becoming doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in silence. In the gym when no one's watching. In the late-night reading that no one claps for. In the hours you protect like sacred ground because they belong to your craft, your vision, your evolution. Build your body, not because it impresses her, but because it reminds you of your own power. Sharpen your mind, not for conversation, but for clarity. Own your hours, because the man who owns his time owns his life. And when she circles back, because she will, it won't be to the same man she walked away from. It'll be to a man who no longer needs to be seen to feel solid. A man who doesn't pause his momentum to accommodate the pace of someone else's uncertainty. The truth is, most people, including her, won't understand what you're building until they can see it. But you weren't born to wait. You were born to lead. Not from a place of force, but from alignment. From knowing that the man who moves without waiting for permission becomes undeniable, not because he asked to be, but because he simply refused to be anything less. So keep building, keep showing up, keep honoring your path even when no one claps. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you powerful. And by the time they finally look up and recognize what you've created, you'll already be gone, miles ahead, not out of spite, but because you stopped waiting and chose to arrive. 9. Discomfort is the doorway to strength. Strength isn't something you inherit. It's something you earn, through pressure, through resistance, and most of all, through discomfort. And yet, many men spend their lives trying to avoid the very thing that would build them. They chase ease, not because they're lazy, but because they've been taught that peace comes from comfort. But it doesn't. Peace isn't the absence of struggle, it's the presence of discipline. And discipline is born in discomfort. Discomfort is not the enemy, it's the doorway. Every moment you feel stretched, uncertain, or rejected isn't a punishment. It's a chance to rise, but only if you stay in it long enough to grow from it. Most men run when the fire comes. They pull back at the first sign of challenge. They numb, they distract, they disappear. Not because they're weak, but because no one ever showed them what's waiting on the other side of the fire. You say you want peace, but peace doesn't come from avoiding the flame. It comes from walking through it with your eyes open, from staying grounded when everything in you wants to escape, from telling the truth when it would be easier to stay quiet, from choosing to be still in the chaos instead of performing your way out of it. Let discomfort shape you. Let pressure refine you. Let rejection redirect you, not away from yourself, but deeper into the man you're meant to be. That's where your foundation is built, not in the good days, but in the days you want to quit and don't. Not when you feel confident, but when you feel exposed and show up anyway. Men who fear discomfort never access their strength, because strength isn't found in how loud you speak. It's found in how consistently you move forward when no one is watching, when it's not easy, when it costs you comfort, when it asks you to let go of the easy path and step into the one that demands more from you. And that's where you become unshakable, not because you've avoided the storm, but because you learned how to hold your ground inside it. That kind of strength doesn't need to be announced. It radiates, quiet, solid, felt. And the man who carries it doesn't just survive the fire, he's forged by it. Listen, brother, let me say this plain and clear. Being nice isn't power if it makes you disappear. If you're constantly walking on eggshells just to keep her happy, if you're swallowing your truth just to avoid tension, you're not loving her, you're losing yourself. Everything I ever shared with you, it wasn't about how to please women, it was about how to lead yourself. A man of value? He doesn't wait for permission to be who he is. He doesn't need her green light. He is the green light. Remember this. She won't remember the guy who tried to please her. She'll remember the one who stood his ground with calm strength. Attraction, it doesn't come from bending, it comes from boundaries. Here's the hard truth. You don't teach her with words, you teach her through action. Every time you stay silent in the face of disrespect, you lower the standard. But the moment you walk away with quiet, unshakable self-respect, you raise it. And someday, if she looks back, she won't see the nice guy. She'll see the man she couldn't replace. If this message stirred something in you, if it reminded you of the man you've buried and the one you're meant to become, then hear this and let it sink in. You were never meant to shrink just to be accepted. You were born to stand tall, even if that makes others uncomfortable. At Stoic Station, we don't chase approval. We build quiet strength. We speak less, move with clarity, and let our presence speak louder than words. If you're done explaining yourself, if you're ready to rise without permission, then subscribe to Stoic Station, like this video. Join us. We don't perform. We become. We don't wait. We lead. And the world? It begins to feel your presence. The moment you stop apologizing for it. Stay grounded. Stay true. I'll see you in the next one.